It would be hard to imagine a better setting to launch Monograph than where we are right now, Lowe Mill Arts and Entertainment in Huntsville. Lowe Mill is the largest privately owned arts facility in the United States. The mission of Lowe Mill is to nurture artists while educating the public about art and the creative process. In order to accomplish this, the Mill has established a community where artists in a working studio environment are able to create, display, and sell their work, and the public has the opportunity to visit, view, learn, and acquire work by local artists.
It was a functioning factory for most of its existence. In 1901, Arthur Lowe came down from Massachusetts and he got the permit to do the building. And the south building is, I believe, where they did the cotton refining. And then the north building was where they did the textile work. And then at some point, they became one company, Lowe Manufacturing Company. And they were built as separate wings so that if one side caught fire, it wouldn't spread to the other one. At some point, they added the connector, and that's why we call it the connector to this day. So this room was where everything kind of started. It's big and empty now because we still rent it out for events, but all the shows that we do and all the art stuff and all the interesting little things began right here in this one little room while we were building out the rest of the building. We've got a little bit of everything here. This was the first big floor build out that we did. 27 studios up here. Okay. We weren't sure if we were even going to be able to fill them all, because this was just a big experiment.
It seems pretty high occupancy.
Yes. And from the beginning, we basically filled it out, and it stayed that way. I don't think we have a studio open more than a month or so. So here's our Flying Monkey Theater here on the right, where we have all the events, music, comedy, poetry, films, whatever you can think of happens there.
Another example of a really cool place that brings art and community together is Studio by the Tracks in Birmingham. Studio by the Tracks is a studio and gallery for artists with autism spectrum disorders. Their mission is to provide a social network and a career path that enriches their artists' lives and betters the whole community.
We provide free studio art classes for adults with autism spectrum disorders. The first time that someone comes to Studio by the Tracks, the main goal is to make them feel comfortable. People with autism go through the world with a lot of uncertainty. They have trouble reading situations and anticipating how things might be. So it's all about making it just very comfortable. We meet them where they are.
We have around 40, 50 individual artists, and they all get individual programs. And so my job is to kind of get to know every single person that comes here and kind of always have them growing as artists with all of their projects.
Very good. One of the hallmarks of autism is something they call restricted interests. So a lot of times they'll be, they know everything about cars, or they're very interested in brides or Byzantine icons, to use 3 examples of our students. So a lot of times we'll just start there with their interests that they already have. As they become more comfortable here, which is a process that can take weeks, months, and years, what we see is that they become more willing to take chances and take creative risks. and take suggestions from us and try new, subject matters and materials and techniques that they might not have tried at first. So it's a very slow process of gaining their trust and making them feel comfortable, helping them feel comfortable. And of course, being in a room with other people with autism is comforting in and of itself. I mean, one of the things we say here is having autism at Studio by the Tracks is no deficit. You're not disabled. When you walk in here, you're just like everybody else in the room. And so there's a real comfort in that.
All they care about is the process. And they are, if a piece is done, they don't look at it again, like it's done. And so they've just spent, in some cases 20 years just making and not doubting their abilities and not really caring what anything turns out to be. It's just producing.
I think our first Art from the Heart may have been in 1991. We had maybe 100 people, 150 people, and had about 30 artists from the community who donated work. And today we will have anywhere between 300-400 and over people who will attend this benefit, and we'll have over 200 artists who are willing to donate their talent for the studio. And I think one of the most things that people really like about this benefit more than anything else is being able to buy the student work. We have a section at the benefit that's strictly our student work. We call it cash and carry. And then we also there's a silent auction and a live auction.
$450. What about $450? $450. $550, sir. Anybody else? We're gonna sell it. If we don't, $7. Thank you, ma'am.
Many people will buy that patron ticket because they are allowed to come in an hour before everybody else. So they get first choice of student work. And that's important. Some people, they really mean business about getting there. So that's just such a good, it validates our students, it validates us and the work we're doing.
Studio by the Tracks artists receive 60% of any sale of their artwork. The studio provides their services and materials to artists free of charge. If you want to know more about Studio by the Tracks, you can find them at studiobythetracks.org. Right now, I want to tell you about an incredible artist in Fairhope, Pinky Bass. Pinky Bass is a photographer, but as you'll see, her work has transformed since she first started taking pictures at 50. She has lived a fascinating life after an undergrad degree in Bible studies, raising a family, and missionary work in Mexico. Pinky went to grad school for art. Now she's a lively 83. She steadfastly continues her hero's quest. Pinky's work mirrors her experience, full of twists and open to turns.
To me, life is this incredible kind of unknown mystery thing that I can't quite unpack. I did a presentation at the Society for Photographic Education titled, Can I Still Call Myself a Photographer? Because basically I do things to photographs, or I use photographs. I still think I'm a photographer, but who knows? I don't know that it matters. Photography is where I found my voice. My husband and I were in Mexico as missionaries. Then the divorce happened, so I went back to graduate school at age 50. This was kind of a departure. My undergraduate degree was in Bible, but I had been doing art all those years in between, so it kind of made sense. I was going to do drawing and painting and discovered photography. I couldn't orchestrate the paint. It was too much having to control, and that's not my nature. John McWilliams was my major professor, and I was using a 35 millimeter camera, and it was just, to me, it felt kind of dead. I mean, I got bored, I guess, was the point. And he said, you want to try pinhole? And I had never heard of pinhole. Every time I would get an image, it's like, oh, look at that! And it would like be a whole new kind of idea. I didn't have control. I had to discover what the camera found, and then you'd make a choice. Being 50 and up, I think I was ready for a lot of things that I wouldn't have been ready for right out of college. You know, I think I brought life experience and a perspective. I kind of more or less knew who I was at that point. I don't think we ever totally know who we are, but anyway. The thesis title was Steal the Elixir and Run, which is part of Joseph Campbell's cycle. The reason I chose that particular step was like, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the wash. What I got, and I was a Bible major, what I got out of all that was really amazing. Somebody once said, don't you wish you'd gotten divorced sooner? It's like, no way. You know, all of those years and all that we went through working with that were very valuable to me in terms of who I am at this point. After I finished graduate school at Georgia State, that was when I got in touch with the Alabama Arts Council and began doing the Artist in Education program. It was Pinky's Portable Pop-Up Pinhole Camera and Darkroom, and I had to wait 2 weeks to learn how to say that without stumbling. This was a pop-up camper. The kids could go in, they would see the image upside down and backwards, but I could actually make a photographic negative and bring it back into the darkroom, develop it, and then make a positive from that. That was a really valuable time, and I loved working with the kids and going around the state of Alabama to locations that were important to me and making a photograph there. All of that was adding into my artistic kind of work. I really did not know about my grandmother and photography, and I had been at Georgia State for a year and came home, and Aunt Ruth said, do you want your grandmother's glass negatives in her camera? And I was like, blown away. She was very influential in my early years in that Daddy was in World War II and Mother was working in Mobile as a draftsman. So we lived with my grandmother, who basically was my mother during those years. Plus her sister, Aunt Nell, my Aunt Nell, who was blind from age 11, lived in the house next door. So that had a really strong influence on me. I mean, she didn't have control over a lot of things, but her way of taking control of things, I think, influenced me a lot. One of the first things I remember my mother talking about was how important was the negative space. And I thought, I don't know what she's talking about until I started doing photography. And it's like, oh my gosh, the negative space. I just learned to see things with her kind of eyes. That's part of what made photography work for me. It was a way of seeing the world, a way of looking. To solarize the Polaroid negatives would throw the positive and the negative into funny juxtapositions. To me, those were magic images because part of it looked like it was the real face and part of it looked like it was the negative. This has been said a lot, but I mean, you need the negative to define the positive. And I think in life, things that have been difficult have helped to define who I am. My sister's cancer kicked in. I couldn't be in the darkroom doing those gigantic prints. That was just, it wasn't working at all for me. I was intrigued with anatomy books that showed what was going on inside of her body. I would look at these things. I've done handwork all my life. I've knitted, I've crocheted. My blind Aunt Nell was incredibly influential in this. We have books where she has the patterns that she could feel the pattern and know how to do her crochet or her knitting from that. So I started stitching anatomical things on an image of the body. It was one of those things where it was small, so it was right here in front of me and I could do that. And it really was moving me away from the straight photographic image. That's what was making me kind of uncomfortable. But I realized, yeah, this is okay. Part of what I like about the stitching process or the cell weaving process I do, it's like oh, wow. So if it went this way, you know, one thing leads to another, one thread leads to another. Sewing on those things made me think about, okay, what else can what would a photograph sound like, which is when I did a bunch of the music boxes. I do like not sitting still. I do like discovering new things. I don't know, it's kind of like, oh, I wonder what the next thing's gonna be. What I'm doing is trying to make sense out of what's going on and how life is moving. I realize that it is kind of, I don't like the word spiritual. I think it gets overused. I haven't found another word for it yet, but it's something about trying to figure out why in the world we're here. Partly it's about my sister's death. My son was also about the time, well, right before she died, my son was killed. The whole issue of our life process, or where we end and how we live our lives and our transitions. I mean, aging at this point is very focal. When you get to be 83, you know, you see things that weren't there before. If you don't follow your vision or follow your voice, it becomes false. I would have liked at one point to think that I could actually make work and sell it and that would be my living. I don't think that would have ever worked for me. It would cause too much control. It would lose the energy, whatever that is, that vibration that happens. My idea about art is that the more you can be totally true to yourself, the more genuine what you're putting out there is. I mean, I like showing work and I like for it to be out, but in reality, I'm doing it because it's my journey. I'm still looking, I'm still searching.
Up next, positioning themselves as Birmingham's hub for sewing activities that promote empowerment, education, and economic opportunity. Bib Tucker Sew Op says that one of their dreams is to facilitate a sewing-based cottage industry that provides income and flexible working conditions for women. But there's a whole lot more, as you can see.
I've lived in other areas and tell people I'm from Alabama, the first thing they associate Alabama with is the quilters. But that's what a lot of people think about when they think of Alabama. And it's something to be very proud of. To me, Bib Tucker is a center for community where people can gather, where they can learn new skills, where they can come and learn new art forms, new ways of expressing themselves through sewing.
Sewing, which to me is an art form, is the reason I met Miss Annie. It's the thing that got us into a shared space. And then from there, two people who probably would have never known each other, but who needed to know each other, met over this art form, this simple art form. This multi-generational, multiracial group that's getting together and quilting every week would not have been possible 50 years ago. Approaching 2015, so in the second half of 2014, Miss Annie and I were talking about the 50th anniversary that was coming up of the Selma to Montgomery marches.
We had the March quilts that we do every single year. It's an annual quilting event that we do every single year in the community.
It's a lot of work being put into them, yeah, and it's a lot of talent too. You'll be surprised at the different ideas that people have. Yeah, it's fantastic.
So the project, because it was so successful that first year, we said we have to keep going with this. So the second year we did gender pay equity as a theme, and then in the third year we did the 50th anniversary of the Loving versus Virginia Supreme Court ruling. And in last year, which was the 4th year, we did environmental justice. So we have made 7 quilts to date. This year for the bicentennial, we're honoring unsung heroines of Alabama.
It's really interesting to me to see how this art form that at times was dismissed as a craft or as purely, woman's work and something that people didn't really value, but we always valued it, and we always knew that there was a way that we could use it to really create change in our community and our world.
We know that we can do good, and you know how people say, well, I don't know how to sew. Well, once you come here, we guarantee you'll know before you leave. But the thing about it is getting them to get in the door.
To me, it's very important to look at something that has been in us and passed down to us through generations. Despite everything that our ancestors have endured, it is still something that we are able to do, are able to practice, and it's really important to who we are as Alabamians.
So I love hobbies, crafts, arts, because people who have an interest in those things do come and seek each other out. And you can find your best friend just from going to see if you can learn how to sew.
Right. And we get along so good. She's like my little daughter. Yeah. So I just think that we are like salt and pepper.
The Sew Op is a great place for people who want to learn how to sew. But once you come in the door and you become a part of this very tight-knit family, we take care of each other. We check in to see if people are doing okay. And so it's built around this hobby of sewing, but it's really about the community.
You get a chance to meet other peoples and you learn from each other. And we have a mixture of different nationalities, and we talk about anything and everything. We just have fun. It's just like a family. You get rejuvenated.
The relationships that are built here are friendships and relationships that can span a lifetime. They're a phenomenal group of women. I mean, I've learned so much just by being a part of this group. I want to be them when I grow up in every way, shape, and form, so yeah.
Bib and Tucker has ongoing workshops and plenty of other exciting ways to get involved. You can find out more at bibandtuckersewop.org. Dustin Timbrook is here to tell us about Lowe Mill from an artist's perspective. What was it like having a studio here?
It's great for artists because it's a big, old building, so you can make a mess. It's got all this natural light, which artists prefer to have in most cases. The artists have access to the space 24 hours a day. It's also great because it's open to the public, so you have that audience of people that are coming here to have a good time, and they pass by your stuff. So there's that advertising, but we also have those days that we're not open to the public, so that you can actually focus on your work.
What is it like working in close proximity together?
It's great because you're constantly in, I guess, what you would call professional development. Like, you're constantly seeing your neighbors make things that aren't the thing that you make, using tools that you're not used to using. And sometimes that leads to collaboration with other artists, and other times it's just, show me how to do this so I can do it for myself. And also just kind of helping each other understand how to do art as a business. Most people don't think of art as a business, but for artists, that's really important. We have to be able to make a living from what we do. And being at Lowe Mill, it helps us build each other up and kind of understand what are best practices for being able to make a living doing what we do.
So what benefits does Lowe Mill being here provide to the Huntsville community?
It's a destination. I mean, there's so much to do here. It takes hours for a visitor to be able to see everything in Lowe Mill, and people make road trips to come here. The simplest thing is it's a destination. It gets people to Huntsville who otherwise might not come here. But also just Lowe Mill artists are very involved in the community outside of the building and produce work that you see all over town. And I tell people constantly, this is the largest arts center in the country, is just as far as the number of artists who are here. I used to say, privately owned, but now it's just the biggest there is. So that's a really standout thing for Huntsville and Alabama.
Before you watch this next piece about your work, tell me a little bit about Timbrook Toys.
So Timbrook Toys is a very, very small company that I've started with my wife, where we design and hand make games and toys. The first thing that we made is a board game called Hedge.
Here's more about Hedge.
So many social settings right now are just everybody's looking at their phone. And even though that's what people do, I don't think it's what they want to do. They do want to actually connect, and a board game kind of does that perfectly. I've always wanted to kind of make everything, like every kind of thing. That's been a goal since I was a kid. Like, how was that made? I want to make my own version of that. So a board game was always kind of inevitability, I guess.
He had ideas for a board game. Kind of what I remember is it's kind of something like Mousetrap. So like moving pieces and things like that. And so we kind of started talking about what that might look like. Everything was, kind of coming together really fast. Like we had a name, we had characters kind of coming all together. We had gameplay, and it was just like, yeah, I think this could be really good.
When we got to that point, we knew we had something we could move forward with. Then the process of actually making it, that took months. The learning process is wood is a very temperamental material. No matter how much we refine the process, like every game still takes a little bit of extra attention individually.
Dustin put out just a little thing on his Facebook, we've made this game, you can buy it in March, and it just kind of blew up.
Just Green Bus, they were one of the first 10 people to order a game, I believe. But later on, we were there. A guy walks up next to us to get a beer, and the bartender is like, hey, you should talk to these people. They created that game that you're so obsessed with. And he was like, what?
I found out about it through Dustin Timbrook's Instagram. I've heard about it, and then when I saw it was here at Green Bus, I was ecstatic about it. And then me and my friends that come here on Wednesday night, we were able to play it, and I've enjoyed it ever since, and I even pre-ordered it.
Got here the next week, we do board game night every week, and they're like, guys, we got a new game. We love new games, and we pulled it out, and I loved it. It was handmade. You could tell somebody really cared about it, and we started playing. It was a lot of fun.
Ever since then, I've been undefeated, so, I'm proud of it. That's why I like to run out and just show off that I'm still undefeated.
He's only played 3 times. The rest of us have played about 20 times, so it's still beginner's luck.
Knowing how hard these artists work and being an engineering city filled with science, engineering, math, just to know that creativity is still out there and we're just part of this growing city and watching it build with everyone working together. It's fun to support each other.
The Huntsville art scene in particular is interesting in that you do have a lot of people that are kind of more technically minded, or even if you're not technically minded, you're at least aware of what's happening around you with all these innovations and technology and things like that.
I love all of the local art here. It's a really great town. Even though it's an engineering town, it's a really great art town. And getting to support that every week has been awesome.
Thank you for watching Monograph. Our next broadcast will be in spring, and in the meantime, you can keep an eye on social media and monograph.tv to see what we're up to. And if you know of interesting work, events, or topics that others should know about, we want to hear from you. Before you go, take a look at this labor of love that Bree Saxon in Birmingham has dedicated a lot of time to. And if you happen upon one, step inside and walk away with your own old school memory. We'll see you soon.
There's just something more authentic about it than the digital booths. I just want to keep it, alive, because I feel like I'm one of very few that know how to still run these things. They were very popular. People would use them for passport photos. They were everywhere back in the day. And then I guess when digital came along, the maintenance and upkeep and expense of keeping it alive just died out and everyone went digital. I don't know of any in Alabama. I wouldn't say that there aren't any, but I'm definitely the only one in Birmingham or nearby. I found this photo booth at Alabaster thrift store and I was like, I will own this. Tried to research online. There's a lot of information on digital photo booths, but none on classic. There is actually like a tiny darkroom inside, so there were elements of it that I related to being a photographer myself. I started foreseeing the future in my life of owning all these random parts and pieces. Inside the booth, there's an actual camera that does take pictures, and there's a photo film paper that feeds down, and your photo is actually exposed onto the paper, and it'll go into all of the tanks and develop your photo, and then it comes out of the booth. It's very mechanical, and for it being so old, there are like weird things that I just break that I have to figure out. It's basically like a giant game of mousetrap. Like every little element has to match up for the booth to run properly. There's 4 different types of chemistry, just like a normal darkroom. There's developer, and there's stop bath, and there's fixer, and there's a toner. And then in between all of those are water tanks just to rinse off the photo strip. When people do get their strips, they're wet, and a lot of people are always very curious, why is it taking so long? And I don't think very many people realize that there's actual, darkroom inside developing the photo. I guess people are just used to that digital booth instantly producing multiple copies for everybody, but everyone's photo strip is one of a kind, which I think also makes it unique and special. Sometimes there's mysterious things that show up in the photos, like ghosts, or like the colors are changing, or they're not perfect. So, when really I think that's what makes them perfect in the end. People don't just do it once, they do it over and over again. I think they become in love with the images that they want a collection with all their friends, and lots of people even just do personal self-portraits, which I think is beautiful. Now that I have an obsession with these classic photo booths, I have actually bought a second one, and I would honestly like to buy more. A lot of the ones I do find have been converted into digital booths, and so I'm always on the lookout, but I've yet to actually find anything. It's been doing well. It's been some love. I put in a lot of time and effort to figure this crazy contraption out. I think it's been like 2 years now, and it's been awesome. I love it. It's crazy.